Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Rice, the membership coordinator here at Freedom of the Press Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. Today's latest membership event is focused on the journalism school, digital security education for journalism schools. We know that many journalism programs feel underprepared to teach digital security. So Martin, my colleague here, Martin Shelton, has helped develop a curriculum for just that. So thank you for joining us. He's joined by our special guest today, Dr. Paramita Pain. Thank you as well. I will let both of you kind of introduce yourselves, talk about the work, and I've always wanted to say this, class is in session. Martin, over to you.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Martin Shelton, principal researcher at Freedom of the Press Foundation. I work on our digital security training team. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment, but I want to kick it over to Dr. Payne to quickly introduce herself.
My name is Paro Pain, and seriously, I have to say this to everyone present. I survived high school with a surname like Pain. So yeah, deeply grateful to Martin and everyone here from the Freedom of the Press Foundation. Without you guys, we would be completely ill-equipped to do the kind of cybersecurity teaching that we do in our school today. I cannot overemphasize the importance of this curriculum. As someone who's done global studies, who does international related research in countries as diverse as Taiwan, India, and Venezuela, in my work, I come across journalists who risk their own lives as well as the information and their sources that they collect in very sensitive situations due to a lack of understanding that surrounds cybersecurity and journalism studies. Very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
No, pleasure is all ours, definitely. We're going to get into some of the ways that you've been using some of the curriculum today. Before we do that, I did want to just give folks a little bit of an overview about what we do on the digital security training team and a bit about the curriculum itself. So with that, let me get into it. So folks might already be aware of some of the different projects that we have in motion, but at FPF, we've got news and advocacy. We also support we support a number of projects that include the U.S. Press Freedom Tracker, which documents press freedom violations across the U.S., whether that's equipment seizures, physical detainment of journalists. We documented it all since 2017. Our team, the digital security training team, also works on a number of initiatives around providing digital security educational resources. Then, of course, we also have SecureDrop, the anonymous whistleblowing system that's maintained here at FPF. When guides and training specifically, we have a whole bunch of materials freely available to anybody, but they are specifically geared to journalists, and we cover a range of topics from if you want to lock down your accounts or learn a little bit more about how the internet works and then how to navigate it more securely. Online harassment, these are all topics that we cover here. And then, of course, we also have our digital security curriculum, and you can see, you can always find that right from our training page at freedom.press/training. Now, what is in the digital security training curriculum? We'll talk about that. But the very first kind of genesis of this project was related to the issue of just a foundational question that we all had on the team. And we've been wondering about this for a long time. What kind of education is being currently supported in journalism schools? Even before I joined FPF, I was talking to the training team about this question. Our executive director, Trevor Tim, is also really curious about this. What exactly are J schools already doing to support digital security education? Because it seemed like from our perspective with newsrooms, it was not nearly enough. And so the hope was that maybe we could get ahead of this problem by looking at what are J schools doing and maybe better supporting them in this respect. So we conducted some research with Dr. Jennifer Henriksen at Washington State University to look at the state of digital security education in US journalism programs. And you can find this research at Journalism Studies. We have a couple of different peer-reviewed academic articles at the intersection of journalism and security, and we're always looking for more things to do in this space. So we're very collaborative. If professors, if you want to chat with us about your ideas, we definitely welcome it. But in this research, we are essentially asking these questions because we want to know, because we have this recognition of the growing, escalating threats that news organizations are facing. Every year we just see more and more online attacks and harassment. We've documented so many of these examples, and the fact that they seem to be getting worse over time, that it really is becoming hard for newsrooms to ignore, and can affect the sustainability of your work and your bottom line. So when journalists are experiencing these types of attacks so frequently, we're wondering, what can be done about this more systemically. We also see an escalation from psychological harms also to physical attacks at times. In one study from UNESCO, we found that, they found that a quarter of female journalists who have received physical threats online, and 1/5 of the people in the survey that they ran with hundreds of journalists found that these attacks, actually the physical attacks, begin with online attacks. So this is a really dangerous kind of escalation that we can already see the hints of it before people show up in your face in person. So with that in mind, these are not purely online attacks. We want to make sure to recognize them for what they are, is that these can be, that you're getting a canary in the coal mine when somebody's telling you that they want to make your life harder. Yeah, they can make your life harder in person too. So we take this very seriously. Journalists come from a lot of different walks of life. There isn't a single path to becoming a journalist, but one of the most consistent places where we might be able to get ahead of this problem is in journalism schools, because we see this place where people are being trained in the ethics and practice of the art and craft as well of doing journalism in very serious and intentional ways. We wanted to make sure that security as an issue is also represented in that skill set. So that's why we're targeting J schools specifically. What do we find in this research? So we found that over 88%, pretty much, we're looking at over 88% of programs do not have digital security education of any kind, as far as we can tell. We looked through course catalogs. We contacted all of the accredited and provisionally accredited programs in the United States to learn about what kind of education that they provided. And we, unfortunately, we're not seeing a lot of coverage in this space. What we do see, where we do see it, what we're primarily seeing is pretty ad hoc trainings, short workshops, and that's great. I think that's a really important starting place for a lot of programs. And we will provide these kinds of trainings. I think it's really important to have a foot in the door, and a workshop is a place to do that. But also, we want to make sure that there's continued learning as well, that this cannot be a one-time thing. And one of the reasons for that is that we also see that a lot of these kinds of trainings are actually deprioritized in favor of things that are seen to be more significant in your hiring prospects. So you can kind of see how the politics and economics of journalism feed back into journalism schools. So you have in a professional environment, they might be looking for all of these skills that are seen to help sell more ads, basically, or help sell more subscriptions. Like, you want people to see some kind of some novelty coming out of your reporting. And that one of the things that a lot of media organizations do is they believe that like I want to hire more students who are able to do multimedia kind of work or programming. And so you're seeing a lot of investments in those skills. What we would argue, and I'm sure that we'll talk about this a little bit more, is that the sustainability of journalism depends on you also having that training in order to make sure that you are well equipped to continue to do this work and not getting bogged down whenever the trolls knock on your doorstep. I do want to also name that my cat is here to support me, and she joins all of our trainings and make sure that we're on point. So you might hear her in the background. Okay, so this is why we wanted to build the US journalism digital security curriculum. The idea with the curriculum is that we can help build capacity to make sure that programs have the kind of support that they need in order to better adopt some of this type of material into their existing coursework. Now, what we didn't want to do is say, here, canonicals, we think that you should definitely implement, and that there's only one right way to do it. From our research, what we found is there's a lot of different types of needs here, a lot of reasons why programs might not actually be able to implement a full-blown curriculum, whether they are unable to find placement in their existing course catalogs or the other competing needs that they have. It's just, we wanted to make sure that they had a very modular way of addressing some of these needs. So if you go to our training page, what you're going to see is this link, and I will show you exactly what this looks like. So we're going to check this out now. And you can always find this at fpf.training/curriculum. We'll also make sure to drop that in the chat so folks can check it out yourself if you like. But here's what the curriculum looks like. So what we have here is a whole bunch of modules for any topic that you might want to get into in our kind of standard repertoire of digital security training issues that we would train professional media organizations on. There's a README here that can kind of show you the different pathways, and the pathways include one that is a workshop. So if you only have capacity for a workshop, great, we've got you covered on that. But if it turns out that you're able to do a full-blown course, then we also have you covered on that. So this would get into topics like what is digital security, why does it matter, and then really foundational questions. We always start with threat modeling, risk assessment, just talking through what exactly are your threats, how do you kind of deconstruct them, and then find specific things that you can do about them. All the way to more advanced topics like mass surveillance in the United States, some of the legal regime here and how to navigate that, and threat modeling based on behalf of sources. So with each of these, there are prerequisites. So you want to start with all the most foundational topics and then get into the more advanced topics. Now, each of these is intended to be something that you can use to kind of augment your existing coursework. So with that in mind, we provide some sample slides to help people to get started with any of these materials within your own slide deck. And let me give you an example of what those look like. So this is a module called Internet and Telecommunication Security. And we just get started by telling you about kind of the basics of the internet. What exactly is happening when you connect to a website, or what exactly is happening when you bring that cell phone outside? How is it connecting to all the nearby cell phone towers, and what's visible to who? You can see we've got some information here about the module, so you can see roughly how long we think it would take. You got some homework, some activities, learning objectives. But let me show you some of these sample slides as well. And folks are encouraged to make a copy of these slides and use them however you like. And I'm actually really proud of these because we get kind of into real basics of just like what are encrypted connections? What exactly do they look like? How can you tell if you're navigating in a relatively safe way? So these are all freely available. It's something that we just are reaching out to a lot of journalism organizations as well as J schools, making sure that folks are aware that we have this amazing resource available to you, and that we also are super open to helping you to implement any of these materials. So I want to just take this opportunity also to speak with Dr. Pain about how exactly you've been using some of these materials. So I'm going to go ahead and just briefly introduce Dr. Pain. And I know that you introduced yourself a little bit earlier, but you very modestly did not get into all the many things that you're doing. So I'll just go ahead and do that for you. So Dr. Pain is an assistant professor of global media studies and cybersecurity center affiliate faculty at the University of Nevada at Reno. Her research focuses on alternate media and global journalism practices from feminist perspectives. She came into the area of cybersecurity and journalism education by accident when at University of Nevada at Reno colleague Dr. Yoon, with whom we've also worked, introduced her to the field. And Dr. Pain is hoping to take lessons from cybersecurity instruction to high conflict areas like Kashmir, the scene of a long and bloody border dispute for years, and to encourage journalism training institutes to take on cybersecurity education. So I've joined your class. It's been a total honor to be able to work with you on all of these materials and learning from your experience here. So I really do appreciate you being here to join us today.
Thank you so much, Martin, Freedom of the Press Foundation. I applaud you and salute you for the work you're doing, because the work you're doing is truly incredible. I've always found it incredibly easy to work with the materials. For example, the PowerPoints that the Freedom of the Press Foundation develops don't even need an email ID for a professor to download and make their own. I make changes, updating them with news on cybersecurity as and when I see it in the press. This is what helps me make the class relevant. But I have to admit, the class wouldn't be around if I didn't have these slides from the Freedom of the Press Foundation to start us on with. Students start out nervous. When they sign up for a cybersecurity class, they often do not really know what they are signing up for. The questions they have are manifold. Is it going to be technical? I can barely run my own computer. How well will I do in this class? How are we graded? I want to learn, but I hope the class is something that I can manage so that my grade is up to par as well. Many confess to feeling extremely inadequate when it comes to technology. That's why when students come into this class, the first job that as professors, speakers, we do is to explain that we are all here precisely because we want to be cyber safe. We want to protect our information. We want to protect our sources. And in the process, become more effective journalists whom sources can also trust, because we've gone that extra mile to make sure that they are also protected. Many often come into the class believing that journalism as a profession doesn't really need cybersecurity understanding. Isn't this something that is meant more for investment banking, finance professionals? When we take them through various scenarios where journalists have been compromised because they really didn't know that VPNs, for example, are not as safe as we believe them to be, that is when students really start engaging. And we take this engagement forward with the material that we get from the Freedom of the Press Foundation. We begin by situating the idea of journalism education as one to protect information and sources. This is the third year that we have been running the cybersecurity for journalism class at UNR. We work with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Martin visits us every time we hold the class. The class has become so popular that now we are offering it in summer as well, and we have waiting lists. We are going to let all waitlisted students in as well, because clearly the material is one that all students must have access to. I am happy to report that in this mission to make journalism as a profession safer, more secure, we have the Freedom of the Press Foundation. We have organizations like the Electronic Frontier Foundation that works with us. The Electronic Frontier Foundation were among the earliest organizations who, in the early 80s, started talking about this impact of regulation and the internet on human communication and the people who use computers and the internet in their daily work. Working with both of these two organizations, teaching my students, as well as my own research in different countries, have made me aware of the need, this enormous, basic, important, mind-bogglingly important need for cybersecurity education for journalism students. I am hoping to be able to take this education to countries like India, which has states like Kashmir, which Martin mentioned, that have been in border disputes where journalists have lost their lives because of a lack of cybersecurity infrastructure. Generally in India, you need degrees like a BTech or a BSc in mathematics, IT, electronic science to take MSc cybersecurity courses. At this point, the education scenario in a country like India is extremely non-inclusive. How do we make cybersecurity more inclusive as an education for journalists and for those in the humanities in general? This is a question I'm grappling with and frankly enjoying finding solutions to at this point. And none of this would have been possible without the Freedom of the Press Foundation and the Electronic Cybersecurity Foundation, EFF. So thank you to you both. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I will say that, one of the things that we found in our research was how vanishingly small the number of programs are that support security education of this kind. And I'm not aware of one that has a more robust program than University of Nevada at Reno, with very few exceptions. So there's a lot of room for growth here, and certainly, you and the program at UNR are really doing some spearheading work here. So yeah, we appreciate that commitment to getting it done. I'm going to stop presenting for a moment. And we're just going to launch into some questions and also we would welcome anybody in chat. If you have questions as well, you are totally welcome to leave those. But I did want to ask you a little bit about what this is like for you. Like it's very, the passion for this topic is very apparent. But I'm also just wondering a little bit about how we got here. So I want to ask you a little bit about that. Maybe we can start with, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the role at UNR. What exactly does it look like? Can you, what's it like to teach journalism programming in general, because folks might not be aware of what that's like, and your interpretation of where J schools are oriented right now.
Yeah, teaching journalism mostly lies in explaining to students the importance of sources, writing a compelling story. What does a compelling story mean? Why at all are we doing a story? Putting that story together. And in today's day and age, considering stories with multimedia elements, which then include this huge use of computer technology in creating that story, creating that video, embedding that voice file in. So today's journalism education involves a lot of knowledge and a lot of use of technology. And what has happened is we are so used to using our computers, recording on our phone, that we don't realize that, like our homes, which need to be locked up at night, locked up before you go to bed or before you go on holiday, explaining to students that password locking a phone, making sure that information that we have recorded, that we are storing on our computers, that we are saving on our emails are equally important. With the introduction of cybersecurity, the journalism field has expanded in a wonderfully positive way. We generally focus on creating stories that serve audiences best, or finding the right sources. With the introduction of cybersecurity, the conversation has had this very positive shift to protecting the audiences by protecting the journalist, the source, making sure that the information is not just vetted, but is also kept safe, so that journalists feel more empowered to write on sensitive topics. Which is why I love the fact that we are doing this and bringing cybersecurity education to schools. It's truly the need of the hour.
100%. Yeah. And this is, it's something that we don't always see every program covering, of course. Your coursework focuses on digital security and surveillance in a way that very few others do. And obviously, we'd like to see a lot of growth here. What got you thinking about these problems?
The very fact that when we talk about journalists self-censoring, battling state-given censorship, we are kind of looking at this problem as an external issue. That, it's up to the journalist to make sure that the source is not revealed. We are teaching journalists the legalities behind what to reveal, how to talk about a source. But we are not giving journalists this basic principle that at the outset, you need to protect yourself. Number one. Number two, really the responsibility of doing our best to making sure that those who've shared sensitive, not just sensitive information, but information that can really help create that one story that will really help bring about change are also people who, because they are connected with the journalist, need a certain level of protection. The very idea that we can provide the first line protection to journalists is really what got me intrigued about the field. That really we have more power than we as educators and journalists are giving ourselves credit for.
Definitely, yeah. And this is one thing that I think that on some level, the entire journalism ecosystem understands very well, is that J schools are really foundational part of how we create how we create and sustain journalism moving forward, which is why it's that much more important that we're also providing this kind of education that is thinking proactively about how to do it safely. We would not let anybody go on the road without getting the driver's license, learning the rules of the road, and for some reason we're not treating this professional practice that does have a lot of occupational hazards as well. We're exposing ourselves to a lot of people who aren't going to like the work that you're doing. Probably if you are doing anything that even touches politics, or not even just politics, maybe celebrities have really passionate fans and you wrote something about them they didn't like, or sports teams, anywhere that you have people who are paying close attention to your reporting, and it's you could really make a lot of people upset, and that's part of the job. Then we also have a lot of corresponding harassment and things of this nature. I wanted to ask, where did you first hear about the curriculum?
I first heard about the curriculum when I started making the syllabus for the course. The first 1 month, Martin, when, Professor Yoon asked me to develop this, I was like, you might as well just have punished me, like I would have taken up anything else. That's when I realized that we convince journalists and people from the humanities that we are not technical people, that technicalities are not our forte. It is somehow, beyond what we do. Because of this mindset, we've managed to convince ourselves that the cyberspace is a complicated space. It is complicated. There is no denying that. But it is not so complicated that we can't dip our feet in. And it is not so terrible that once we start exploring, that we can't understand how things work. The basic infrastructure of how the internet works has remained the same. We've added nuances, added complexities, which is why I enjoy teaching this course so much. It is a chance for me to explain to my journalism students that basic understandings of the internet is very like understanding the way basic systems like the legislature, the judiciary in different countries work. And if you can do that, you can do this as well. All you need is just that little leeway to understand how packets of information travel online, and how, when governments and people, when they want to prevent that travel, what are the kind of roadblocks they can put, and how you can and you have tools at your disposal to subvert this. So the first classes, we do talk a lot about technicalities. I tell students that we are going to discuss technicalities. At the most, you will be bored. It doesn't mean that you won't understand. And it's actually wonderful to see how hard students try. And then they realize it's not hard at all. And that's when the class really gets going.
Well, yeah, I wonder if you could tell us more about that. How do you use the curriculum in practice?
So we first begin with the Digital 101, which is among the earliest PowerPoints that is there on the curriculum. It's one of the earliest modules. What I really love best about the modules is not only do I have a PowerPoint, a presentation that I can change, add slides to with minimum trouble. Minimum. I don't need permission. I don't need to write to Martin. I don't need to write to Ryan. Like, oh, can I make these changes? No, it's there. I've downloaded it. Literally, when Freedom of the Press Foundation says, make it your own, you guys really mean it. So we begin with that presentation. We talk about passwords. We talk about YubiKeys. You know, the fact that it's simple. We talk about Signal. We do the exercises. Downloading Signal. Looking to see how many people are already on Signal. Understanding the differences between WhatsApp and Signal. Once we start talking about chat applications, it really gets students interested because we also have international students who use these chat applications to, stay in touch with people back home. What it does is it creates this personal connect. Then they download the applications and realize so many of their classmates are on it already. It's just that they know about the applications. They didn't bother thinking too much in depth about it. And now they do. So establish a connect, hope that that connect is strong enough to last. And that's when we get into the curriculum. We also talk a lot about, young people who get into hacking. And I wish we had more curriculum on that, because I show them the videos. It's young people who are talking, and the students get really excited. And then I have to tell them that, yes, they are doing this, but it's not always great. They don't like to hear that. But we have to also, draw that balance between glamorizing something that looks so exciting, because it is rather exciting. And, young people are doing it, but it's fun. I mean, this is the third year I'm teaching it. I'm never bored teaching this class.
Along that
Yeah.
same vein, I'll read a question from chat from Jerry. I have been involved in scholastic journalism at the high school level since 1971. I did this digital security training as part of the assignment for 35 years, and more recently wrote an online journalism course for the virtual high school. My students were trained in and did investigative reporting, some of it in the community involving national organizations and going undercover. My experience is that some of the students who went into journalism careers went to J schools, but others didn't. I believe that security training is necessary for high school journalists, but obviously not a full course. So the question, are these materials suitable, or are they in a format in which they can be adjusted for high school programs? Dr. Payne, you talked about making it your own, so I thought to insert that question here.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful question, and 100 times yes. Seriously, if you look at the modules, the exercises are done in a way to engage people of all age groups. Even people who are, pretty high up on the cybersecurity ladder. Because, cybersecurity at the end of the day evokes a lot of personal responses. I mean, look at our passwords. Mine had my birthday and I think my social security for the longest. And seriously, right? And why did I do that? Because, it's so easy to remember. Responses to technology is deeply personal. And I really believe that at high school level, we have to teach students. The Freedom of the Press Foundation curriculum also has modules on doxing, cyber harassment, bullying, which is so incredibly relevant for high school students. Because, it's middle school, high school, when often bullying as a concept starts. It's not terribly pleasant to acknowledge this, and often schools struggle to bring this topic up. How do I tell a student that don't behave like that? It's really not working. But if you have a module like this, then completely detaching from situations, we can talk about super important issues without really making it terribly personal. What I loved about the curriculum is, especially the module on doxing, is it led to conversations about online dating, which young people really need to understand while being fantastic. Like here, you've got an option. It's opening you up to more people, can really be extremely harmful. And you really don't know who that person is behind that profile. So yes, it's incredible. These modules are suitable from, I believe, ages 12 upwards.
That's a really great question. Only thing that I would add there is I believe that a lot of these materials are really important for younger people, especially as they, before they are getting involved in this role professionally, because there's a bunch of hygiene things that we can kick off before you need them. It's a lot easier to make sure that your online footprint looks how you want it to look as we get started in the field, as opposed to going back in time and later and going, I should probably delete all of these things, or maybe I shouldn't have put my phone number on my resume, where it got indexed by a bunch of data brokers. And those are all things that we talk through in the materials. So it's a lot easier to address some of these things a little earlier on into the career. Yeah. I did also want to just recognize that we're approaching time. Wanted to maybe close out by also just letting folks know, and we can definitely continue to answer any additional questions offline with anybody. We're happy to chat and keep in touch. Going to go ahead and also just share this. We've got, wait, is my screen share working? Yes. Well, for some reason, my screen doesn't want to share, and that's fine. But wanted to just invite folks to reach out. If you have any digital security training needs, you can reach us at training@freedom.press. That's an email for our digital security training team. And then also love to encourage everybody to, if you want to stay plugged into any of these topics, reach out and let us know if you'd like to subscribe either to our journalism school newsletter, where we give monthly updates on all of these materials, any changes there, as well as some information about what's in the news on this topic and things that you can talk to your class about. And then also, and all the corresponding digital security modules that are related to these issues. And then we also have we have another newsletter for, it's called Digital Security Digest. It's a weekly newsletter. We'll just tell you about the week's news and what you can do about it, and updates from our team. So we really appreciate everybody joining us, and please do keep in touch. Also want to say thank you again to Dr. Pain. You have been just so generous with your time, so we really do appreciate being able to have you here today.
Thanks to you, we have a curriculum to do this for our students. So I owe you guys now and forever. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
Thanks again.
Well, I would love to keep you for one more question since you offered. I know when I started here at Freedom of the Press Foundation, my whole perspective on how I could protect myself shifted from pessimism to optimism. There was an assumption of Big Brother being everywhere, especially after the Snowden revelations. So, could you talk a little bit about if you've seen that shift once students are given these self defense tools at the end of the class? Because you did mention that they were nervous at the start.
Yeah. I do see that even though nervousness about the entire situation hasn't like disappeared, because being journalists, they are also well aware that while they are taking steps to protect themselves, the government and other surveillance technologies are also keeping up, making sure that they are able to subvert this so that they can get to journalists. So they are very aware of this concept of the surveillance state. But what I see is, while there is not a complete erasure of nervousness, there is no like hopeless optimism that, yay, now I know what to do. There is this thought that I can do, that I am not completely at the mercy of somebody who may be trying to hack in. Number one is that. Number two, they realize that cybersecurity is a uniquely human issue with a very technical bent. I've had students who've come into this class and who've then gone on to work for the city of Reno, Nevada as cybersecurity officers. And I love what they do. What they do is they try to understand how people in the organization are using technology so that they can identify the gaps in understanding. This clarity of realizing that, yes, cybersecurity is an issue, but it's also an issue that has resolvable trends is what I'm aiming for. And I love how students, make the learning from the course their own.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us, Martin. Thank you for leading this conversation. We do ourselves have a webinar, Defense Against the Dox Arts, where we talk about protecting yourself from doxing. That's in our membership archive, so feel free to check that out. If you guys have any questions about this or other materials, you can email me at membership.freedom.press. Professor Shelton, Professor Pain, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again.